Hi, and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'll be showing you the process I used to chemically wood burn a decorative cutting board I got from the craft store with everyday household items. This made a great present for a family friend, and I think I might make a few more as Christmas gifts. So let's get started, and I'll see you at the end. First, you'll want to measure the size of your cutting board to see what size you will need to cut your decal. Mine is 9 by 14, so I decided to make my decal 8 inches wide. I made it in Design Space and cut it out with my machine. Here I'm weeding it out. In order to make a stencil with the negative space that's left, I'm weeding out the actual design, making sure I keep the center letters in place. Now it's time to measure out the household items we'll be using to wood burn. I'll be using little silicone cups and a small scale to measure out the ingredients. The first ingredient I'll use today is cornstarch. I'm going to measure out roughly 2.5 grams into my cup on the scale. It's not an exact science, so it's okay if it's just approximate. And then I'll pour it into my mixing cup. The second ingredient we'll be using to create our wood burning paste is Lysol toilet cleaner. We will measure 5 grams of the cleaner into the silicone cup to make a 2-to-1 acid to base ratio. Normally, the chemical you need to wood burn is ammonium chloride, and the formula for that is NH4Cl. The active ingredient in this household cleaner is hydrochloric acid, and the formula for that is HCl. So when you heat up ammonium chloride to wood burn, it deconstructs itself into ammonia gas and then the hydrochloric acid. So basically, by using this cleaner with hydrochloric acid, we're using the active ingredient that burns the wood. Next, I'm mixing the cleaner and cornstarch together to create a paste. You want to do this until it has the thickness of cake batter. You can see it dripping just a little bit off of that. It's still, it's chemicals, so it's not going to be cake batter. Maybe that's a bad idea to say that it's like food. All right, so here I have my transfer tape that I'm putting on top of the stencil I've created. I will burnish it down so that I can peel the stencil off its backing later. I do recommend using stencil vinyl or removable vinyl. Next, I prepared my cutting board surface by wiping it gently down with a paper towel. I did hear that wiping it down with alcohol helps get any extra sawdust out. Now, I'm not sure using alcohol on wood is actually a good idea as a rule of thumb, but I'm just experimenting here. So feel free to skip this step if you think it's unnecessary, but I will say that there was a little sawdust residue left on the paper towel after using the 91% alcohol. So it did pick up something. All right, now I'm going to peel the stencil off of its backing. I'm really terrible at this, so I had to use my tool to make sure that the little letters stayed in place. Just make sure that everything's laying flat. There, I'm just rearranging everything to make sure that everything's laying flat and all the pieces are where they need to be. All right. So next, I'm going to be using the grid lines of my craft mat to help me line up the words so that the decal looks straight. And then I'm going to press the vinyl down to seal it to the wood. Again, don't use permanent vinyl like me. Next, I'll peel off the transfer tape, leaving the decal on the wood. And then double check to make sure that the vinyl is laying flat against the wood, especially at the outline of the words and images. If there is a small gap, your paste can move underneath the vinyl and bleed your design. A good step here is to tape around the edges of the stencil so that if you have any unplanned spills, you won't accidentally burn your cutting board where you didn't intend. Now it's time to apply our paste to the stencil. Over time, the paste thickened into more of like a foam, and then I ended up with less product than I intended. I almost ran out of paste on the design, so I would recommend making more than what I did. I'm using a foam brush to apply the paste. I started with dabbing, but I'm not a very patient person, so I ended up lightly applying the paste with brush strokes. Try to keep an even coat of paste throughout your design. I'm just going over everything, trying to make sure it's even. Once everything is applied, I took a paper towel and blotted off the leftover paste. I found that when I left the paste on longer, it actually soaked into the grains and caused a lot of bleeding. So it's like a race against the clock to get all the moisture out of the paste. Excuse me. Next, I'm going to get my heat gun ready. My craft tool has two settings, high and low, and I put it on the highest setting for wood burning. While it's heating up, I will remove my stencil. Here's where you'll see the permanent vinyl damage the board just a bit. It's peeling up some of the particles of the wood, and it did end up slightly damaging the design. If you're using stencil or removable vinyl, I expect you probably won't have this bad of a problem. But once the stencil's removed, you can see the design paste. And I'm just going to remove some of those little spots there and then heat it up with my tool until it burns. Here's where you definitely want to make sure that you are in a well-ventilated area, preferably outside, and please wear PPE like an N95 mask or a respirator. Personally, I was wearing a respirator for this portion of the video. I did notice while I was burning the design that it wasn't quite a uniform burn. So I did have to go over a few extra places. Overall, the time it took total to burn this cutting board was about 10 minutes. By the way, if you like this video, please like it and subscribe to my channel. You can click on the bell notifications to be notified when I come out with a new video. Thanks you guys for your support. So here's the product of the burnt paste. It looks pretty good and pretty dark, but there are places where the vinyl peeled up the wood and they were flaking off, and it just didn't look quite right. So I decided to wash it off, and here it is washed off. It's still a bit wet, and the light was bad. So once it dries, I'll show pictures at the end, but I did also oil the board when I finished with some mineral oil. I left it unvarnished, but you could definitely varnish it if you'd like. I noticed that it wasn't uniformly burned throughout the design. If you follow the line in the wood, certain lines looked like they burned darker than others. I'm not sure if that was user error or if it was just the panels of wood were more prone to darker or lighter burn. My honest review is that it was overall a little lighter than I thought it would be, but it still yielded a beautiful product. And that's it. Here are some photos of the cutting board once it dried completely. It turned out really beautifully, and it was easy to do, really similar to glass etching. I hope this gave you an idea for a fun DIY project without breaking the bank. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and if you have any requests for a project you'd like to see. Thanks, everyone. Good luck wood burning on your own cutting boards, and I'll see you again next time.